What's up, guys? Welcome back to the podcast. It's been a minute. Got moved cross country, back in Ohio. So looking for a job. Hopefully, we'll get a house instead of an apartment next. Landing at some families for now. So if you could be praying for that, that'd be amazing. Today's episode, though, is from about 3 months ago, I think. So it's not current. I have a lot of thoughts on some stuff we talked about since then. And we'll get to that at some point. But this week's and next week's episode, they're like 3 months old. And hopefully, I will be recording some newer episodes very soon. So enjoy the episode. Thanks, guys, for listening and staying with me, even though I've been a little inconsistent. Life is crazy that way sometimes, though. So anyways, have a good one and enjoy the episode.
It's littered throughout the entire New Testament. There's so many things like, this is at hand. He will not delay. This is happening soon. It's the last hour. I'm coming quickly. You have, and even scholars take this too. And this is there's only like so many choices you can make. It's either the disciples literally believed that it was going to happen in that generation, and they were wrong, which I've heard a lot of people say that, oh yeah, they just didn't know what they were talking about. I refuse to accept that as an answer. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Or we just don't understand it. It's about, they said it like that, so every generation will be on their toes. And so everybody, he could come at any time. Or it just was what it was, and it happened in that generation. Like, those are the three options. Maybe there's another option, but those are the three most logical options.
Internet, welcome back to Fringe Faith. I'm joined again with Nick Debs, and if you listen to our conversation last time, you know that he's a preterist, and you know what that means. And if you're anything like me, you hadn't really heard that before, probably, or at least that broken down. And I mean, I've been thinking a lot about it lately, and it's definitely an interesting take. It's obviously very counter most of current day's culture, but we like that here on Fringe Faith. We like to challenge the narrative, challenge the norms, and kind of flush out what is actually truth and what is just assumed throughout the modern church culture. And so, welcome back to the show, man. I appreciate you coming.
Hey, what's up, man? Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, I, I still don't like. I wouldn't say that I know where I stand on any of it necessarily. I find it to be incredibly like interesting. I find it to be it seems relatively valid. I've asked some people, I'm like, what do you think of this? And I don't think they know a lot about it, but they're like, I think it's hard to make a case for that. And I'm like, I don't know, man. I've heard some pretty strong case made for it.
Yeah.
And I at this point in my pursuit of truth, I hold a lot of things loosely regardless. Like there's not
For
a lot
sure.
of things that I take a hard stance on anymore, because I mean, even there for a while, I'd be sussing out some seriously controversial topics, and I'd be like, I think maybe, and then I'd be like, well, maybe not, I don't know, but I do know that, there's validity to all of it. So, but it's interesting. I have been seeing a lot more about it on Instagram lately, which is funny because I had never seen anything about it before. And I don't know if have you seen those AI videos that people are making of like, uh, what dispensationalists believe right now, and it's like Jesus talking to these disciples, and they're like, Lord, what do you mean by coming soon? He's like, no, I'm talking about Gary in 2025, and I'm talking about Red Bull that'll be born in Texas in 2025 4 or whatever. And I'm like, oh, that's hilarious.
No, I haven't seen those, but yeah, I mean, it makes total sense to make fun of something like that because, in my opinion, it's super clear in the text. And I'm like you too. Like, I don't take like basically even within my framework, I don't take a hard stance on any of it. I will take a hard stance on this is clearly saying that this happened in the first century. all the details within that, I mean, we're so far removed. It's hard to like be like, this is exactly how it went down. So I'm not so hard stance on any of that, but yeah, I mean, dude, in my opinion, it's so clear. Like the even in let's just take it for example, Matthew 24, the Olivia discourse, which corresponds to Luke 21 and Mark 13, but they're like literally pointing at the temple and being like, "Yo, Jesus, like, what do you think about this temple? Like, isn't it so awesome?" And he's like, "Oh, it's all gonna come down,"
Mm.
and then he lists all this stuff, which all that stuff did happen in the first century. Like if we were talking about earlier, Josephus, there were earthquakes, there was famine, at the time it was the Pax Romana, which was like the Roman peace. They had conquered everything, and it was generally a really peaceful time. And if you had told somebody at the time that Rome was going to come against Jerusalem, who was like their buddy, no one would even believe that. And at the end of all that, which is very individualized to the region, where he's like, "Yo, like, don't go get your cloaks and don't come from the, if you're on the mountaintops, just leave and flee to the mountains." Like, it's obviously not talking to the whole world, which people try to make it seem like. But at the end of all of it, he says all this stuff is going to happen in this generation, and this is where if without doing like violence to the text, like that's people try to come up with all these random
Hmm.
scenarios. Oh, he didn't mean this generation, he meant that generation, or he meant this race. And they're just like, it's almost like they're just trying to come up with something instead of it being like,
Yeah.
it just says what it says. And then history backs it up within that generation, 40 years, all
Yep.
that stuff happened and the temple fell. Like,
Or ma
what more do you need? You
Yeah,
know?
or maybe he meant more of a proverbial long, like the entire generation after him and considering it all one generation. Like maybe he means that. And I do realize that especially in modern culture in America especially, we take the English translation as like, oh, it's definitively this. I mean, so much so that I see a lot of weird conspiracy stuff around like, oh, well, this word sounds like this word and it etymologically came from this word. And I'm like, okay, yeah, in the
100%.
English,
Yeah.
like the Hebrew and Greek are completely different words, you dingling, and they mean
Yeah. No,
different
even
things a lot of times.
like I was trying to do that the other day with somebody who's much more knowledgeable than me, and he was like, "Yeah, that doesn't work in Hebrew." Like, he's like,
Yeah.
that word sounds close in this, but no, not in Hebrew, bro. Like, keep thinking about it.
Yeah.
But
Well,
yeah,
I
I
want to
see
learn
that all the
Hebrew for
time.
that fact. Yeah.
I am pretty blessed. One of my best friends actually is an Israeli, and Hebrew was his first language, and he has a real knack for language and
Mm.
just etymology. I don't. There's something about it. He's just real good at it, and he does have plans. And I know this is a little weird, but because nobody's done it, he wants to set up a like teach you how to read and learn Hebrew through the New Testament,
Mm.
which obviously the New Testament's like a translation into Hebrew because we don't actually have Hebrew documents, but
Right. It's Greek
still, he just
and
wants to do
Aramaic.
that for fun.
Yeah.
And so he would be real good at that. If eventually, if someone ever wants to learn, that would be a really cool place to
Nice.
go through is through him. So
Nice.
it's cool to bounce ideas off of him, and so that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, that is a blessing.
But so another thing too, like if we're gonna, we're talking about how this did happen in this generation. It's it's not just that verse. It's like it's not just that part.
Oh yeah.
It's littered throughout the entire New Testament. There's so many things like this is at hand. He will not delay. This is happening soon. It's the last hour. I'm coming quickly. I mean, you have, and even scholars take this too. And this is some. There's only like so many choices you can make. It's either the disciples literally believed that it was going to happen in that generation, and they were wrong, which I've heard a lot of people say that, oh yeah, they just didn't know what they were talking about. I refuse to accept that as an answer. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Or we just don't understand it. It's about they said it like that, so every generation will be on their toes,
Mm.
and so everybody, he could come at any time. Or it just was what it was, and it happened in that generation. Like those are the three options. Maybe there's another option, but those are the three most logical options. And it's like it just there's so much backed up around it too, coupled with the fact that this eschatology, I know we've tried to make it about something in the future, but it was about the end of the Jewish system. And there's eschatology is littered all throughout the Old Testament. The Song of Moses, in Deuteronomy 32. I mean, Jeremiah, Isaiah. It's all about the end of the Old Covenant Israeli people. Like the New Covenant is just like kind of giving you more details and the unfoldment of the end of them, not the end of us, the end of them. And so you can even the all the hopes, all the blessings, all the promises were promises to Old Covenant Israel.
Hmm.
All the festivals were an Old Covenant system thing. If all that Old Covenant stuff is done, that means like it had to be finished then. Otherwise, this is why dispensationalists and futurists want to make a third temple. This is why they want to reset up sacrifices up because they know all that stuff still has to be going on for it to be finished. And so they've concocted this scenario to where, oh, it's going to reset up again because they know all that stuff has to be done away with because it doesn't make sense in the text.
Well, and on some level, well, first of all, I one of the most compelling things to me was we were talking about in our first episode the fact that when all of the books were written, the temple still stood. It was pre 70 AD. Now, obviously, like we talked about, they try to stretch Revelation out further, but that just doesn't make any sense. So to me, that's super compelling. And even if it was after, like there should have been at least somebody should have said something about, hey, also the temple fell and there will be another one or something like that. Like
Mhm.
there should have been some articulation of that. And to me, that is super compelling. But another thing that's really compelling to me is the more and we can or cannot go into this, I don't care either way, but
Yeah.
the more I look into Israel and the Zionism and stuff like that, and if anybody wants a really good breakdown of what's going on in Israel and why, whether or not Christians should or shouldn't uh, be backing Israel, so to speak, Laura Sanger on her YouTube channel, No
Yeah.
Longer Enslaved, is breaking that down really well right now. So if
Mm.
anybody's interested in that, I'll leave a link in the description. But the more I learn about Zionism and the current Israeli system, the Khazarian or the Edomite or all that stuff, the more I realize that I think dispensationalism only makes sense if you are trying to force Israel to be what it's becoming or whatever. I think it it would make sense that it came about so that people like Christians would back a reinstitution of Israel.
Yeah, it was designed that way, in my opinion. I think it was, I mean, there's been some good work on this, like Jeremy Slater, like Jay Slay USA's got some good stuff on this. But I mean, this was set up in the 1800s through the C.I. Scofield Bible to, I think, get the church in America backing, knowing that they would have to get the support of them to set up Israel in the future. And then also, I mean, I don't want to get too conspiratorial, but even the world wars, and you get the Rothschilds setting up in 1917, like writing, getting the whatever I can't remember what it's called, but setting up the state of Israel even before all this stuff happened in 1948. In
Yep.
my opinion, it's very planned for whatever kind of world dominant system that they have, and it was set up to be uh, a very war creating machine in the Middle East to continue to break people down and to get control and to just so it's like it's designed in my opinion. And I mean
Yeah.
we could it gets super deep into that and but
I do want to,
it,
I do think I want to
yeah,
talk about that at some point because I think it matters, especially because my whole thing is seeking out what is actually true. And um I know it's a super touchy subject right now, and it's touchy because of assumed ideas around what happened in history and like misguided beliefs about what's happening now. And there's this massive contention. I do want to talk about it at some point, like if like for people
no,
to
I'd love
know.
to.
Yeah, and if you want to do it, that'd be great sometime. We don't have to do it today. But I'm just letting people know
Yeah.
like this is a super complex issue and like full stop like just so people know, choosing to not be a dispensationalist or choosing to not be quote unquote in full support of the government of Israel, like that doesn't make you an anti-Semite. Just putting that out
No,
there.
yeah, 100%. I mean, like like I was just saying, one of my best friends is Israeli, and me and him both talk about how retarded and messed up this is and doesn't make sense all the time.
Yeah.
And so,
But
it's not
anyways,
about, yeah, it's not about them as a people group. It's about a political system that's
yeah.
corrupt that I think is a war machine on purpose to continually like gain control.
Yeah, it's like every other grassroots movements that's ever happened. It starts as something that's meant to be pure, and then political interests intervene, and next thing you know, it's not even close to what they claimed it was in the beginning. But if you say that it's not that, then people get mad about you. Like, I mean, last thing I'll say on this, it's like BLM. Like BLM started as something that was supposed to be a heartfelt cry, and then it got politically overtaken real fast, and then it became something completely different than what it was. But all
Yeah.
that to say, it is interesting when it comes to like the dispensationalism and stuff. Like looking at it, I'll be honest. Like I'm getting to a point where I don't get to spend a lot of time researching this stuff, but I'm getting to a point where I'm like, dispensationalism doesn't make that much sense unless, and maybe this is just my paradigm that I've always held, unless there's like the wheel within a wheel ideology that things are cyclical and patterned and patterns play out through history, and maybe there is another version of the same thing that will happen over time. Like I'd like to think that, and maybe that's just, and honestly that may just be me going like I like that, but also it could be convoluted, like people conjuring up this thing so that people believe that right now all these things are happening because God said they would. But what if it is actually people trying to twist the narratives to go, oh, this actually does match the Bible? So I don't know.
Yeah, I honestly think they're using it as a playbook. They're self-creating and self-fulfilling prophecy through the use of dispensational Christianity, Islam, and Talmudic Judaism, and they all have an end times war that brings about their Messiah, and all the characters just slightly are shifted. And I think it's all by design and to like I said, to at some point get control and reign from Jerusalem,
Hmm.
which kind of harkens back to what I think the Old Covenant Jews meant at the time. They rejected Jesus because they thought he was going to come and take out Rome and rule from Jerusalem literally.
Yeah.
And so that's he was like, my kingdom has no observation. That's not what I'm going to do. It's a spiritual kingdom. I'm going to
Yep.
reign from heaven. And so I kind of feel like it's all a big finger to God and be like, you know what, we are going to rule from Jerusalem literally, and that's where our throne's going to be. We don't care what you said, God. And so, in my opinion, that's kind of how I see it. Like, um, from just like a blanket overview of what kind of what's going
Yeah.
on is like, um, and interestingly enough, in my opinion too, it's more likely that the Christian Palestinians are probably the closest thing to Old Covenant Jewish people, more so than the Jews. Like,
Oh yeah.
just to even go back in with what we were saying before, in the curses in Deuteronomy 28, I believe it is, at the end, Moses tells them, you're going to be sold back to Egypt for next to nothing as slaves.
Mm.
And so this is what Josephus records at the end of the Roman and Jewish War that ended in 70. The war didn't end. That's when the temple fell. The war actually was 7 years. In the middle of it is when the
Yeah.
temple fell. But that they were so tired of killing the million Jews that they took them as slaves, but nobody wanted them, and so they sold them for next to nothing or gave them away for free to Egypt. Exactly what Moses said.
Mm.
That's one of the craziest, coolest prophecies. I mean, it's not cool, but
Right.
craziest prophecies in the Bible, in my opinion, that I never hear anybody talk about. But it's like he said that how long before that happened, and it's exactly what happened. So all the Jews who were there died, and or the ones who lived were shipped out of there, whereas the Christians who followed Jesus, the Jews who listened to what Jesus said, who said flee to the mountains, in Luke 21 he doesn't say abominations of desolations. He says when you see the armies come surround the city, flee to the mountains. And I remember I was like, how do they flee if the armies like surround the city? So in history, it's recorded that they surrounded the city and they don't know the reason why, but all of a sudden they left for a couple days, like they were called away for whatever. And so all the
Mm.
Christians remembered what Jesus said and they left to Pella and fled to the mountains. And then the armies came back around. And that's when it took 5 months the siege like on Jerusalem, and eventually the temple ended up falling. And so all the people who listened to Jesus went to the mountains. And I could see once the war was over, we're like, okay, cool, let's go back to Jerusalem. And so all the Jews who believed Jesus were all still right there, where all
Mm.
the ones who didn't were killed or shipped out to Egypt or wherever to be slaves.
Yeah.
So if they'd been there for thousands of years, it would make sense that the Christians are the ones who are actually the old covenant Jews. Like,
Yep. And the rest of them are Edomites, come Khazarian, come Ukrainian or Ashkenazi and all that other stuff. Like that's, but that's a whole thing. There's books on that. Again, like Laura Sanger's talking about it and breaking that down pretty well. So there are, some of the Jewish people definitely are the covenant people, quote unquote, but a lot of them, and I believe there were even some, I'm not gonna know uh which research project this was, but there was apparently a research project that happened where they tried to find out, the genetic sequence of a lot of Israelis, and a lot of them that are claiming that actually do come out of the European Khazarian region. And so it's like, but I digress. The point of a lot of this though is recognizing that there is and we talked about a little bit ago, like the difference between the Hebrew and the Greek and all that stuff. There, even in the Greek New Testament, there was still Hebrew ideology in it, and there was a cultural paradigm and stuff. And I think that's another thing that the church needs to recognize too is like the cultural understanding of how things were at the time. That's massively important. We have to look at that. And I know there's a ton of people right now that in the church, like as soon as you talk about like say maybe women being preachers or something like that, they immediately get their defenses up and you go, okay, well, what about the context? What about the whatever? And then people will push back and be like, you don't need the context, you just need the Bible. And I'm going, okay, well, go back to the Hebrew and the Greek, and I'm sure you'll, have at least a somewhat different mindset of what was going on. But you actually have to know what's going on because we recognize that Paul and all the others were quoting other people at different times, and we have to look at like, okay, what was the context? And so honestly, anybody that's like, you don't need the context. They're probably pushing some cult nonsense, or they're trying to maintain some power structure and stuff. And so you probably need to like abandon them because their ideology is steeped in probably selfishness or some ideology that they refuse to even budge on, which is probably not actually biblical. And we have to get back to context. And a lot of that context comes from Hebrew mindsets that are older than even like the Talmudic idea. So the Talmud was written, and then that became what Talmudism became basically Pharisaism, which we know what Jesus thought about Pharisaism, and then it progressed into what is most of today, Talmudic Judaism in today. And so we've in our Christian ideology taken a lot of that ideology instead of ancient Hebrew context, which is what Jesus was referring to. And so I think you and I both are pretty solid like on trying to get to that point.
100%. And plus, and I would include this in context, but audience relevance too.
Hmm.
Like I have to understand who they're talking to because, and I'm guilty of this, and I know most people are, is they read themselves into the text, which
Yes.
you're going to end up in massive problems if you do that.
Yeah.
Um, Even me and you were kind of talking about this off screen just a little bit ago, but it was like, I'm getting to the point where I don't think it's talking to me like at all, and I'm to where it is there for me to glean from, and it is there for me to like understand God's trustworthy, especially with a fulfilled understanding, because we're not waiting for anything. Like God kept His word. That's something that, in my opinion, is different. If with this view, it's different than everybody else because every other religion, they're still waiting for something to happen. And I'm like, I'm not waiting for anything. Like it's done. God kept his word. He's trustworthy. Like I can put my faith and relationship needs like in this guy who's trustworthy. And
Hmm.
there's a Proverbs, what does it say? Let's look it up. I want to get it right.
No,
It's
you're
this,
good.
I think it's like a perfect Proverbs to go with this like theology, I guess you could put it, this perspective. Um, and while I'm looking this up, why this is so important, and this is really big. All the people in the political realm who have this like ear to the president, like Paula White, they're all dispensationalists. So they all have this view that if you are a dispensationalist, your view is that two-thirds of Israel needs to be destroyed in the future. Like they want war to happen because they think that's going to bring Jesus back.
Hmm.
Same goes for Talmudic Judaism. They believe they're supposed to bring war so that the Messiah will come. Same with Islam. To where this perspective is so important is saying, no, none of that's true. It's already happened. It's done. And none of this needs to happen. Stop self creating and self fulfilling prophecy for
Mm.
your own ends.
Wow. Yeah, I mean that makes sense. And even it's which seems counterintuitive because Jesus' whole thing was, bringing peace, not, bringing and championing war, you know. And so if we're pushing for warmongering to happen, then we're like we're pretty much antithetical to Jesus' teachings. So it doesn't make any sense. But it
Yeah,
would
I
make
mean, even
sense that
just
the
think
enemy
about
would it would make sense that the enemy would try to twist and pervert something into a point where we would cheer on, the destruction of
who does that sound like? Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
So check this out. Proverbs 13:12. Hope deferred makes the heart sick, but longing fulfilled is a tree of life. So it's like people try to say like, "Oh, you're stealing my hope." If there's stuff in the future, like I'm hoping I'm going to get a super awesome immortal body in the future. Or I'm going to get raptured out of here. They put their hope in all this stuff that's in the future, but this says hope. If you're longing for hope, it's 2,000 years down the line, makes the heart sick. But if
Mm.
it's fulfilled, and I think this is really intentional, it's a tree of life. Like that's crazy. Like that's
Mm.
I don't know that. makes a lot of sense. Like if I was going to pick a verse to sum up this understanding, I think perfect.
Yeah, a lot of us read that into more of like a personal thing. Like I don't know that, but yeah, that makes some sense to the context even.
And
Yeah.
what's more personal than your relationship with Jesus? I mean, if you're still hoping for something that your entire life never comes, like, but
Yep.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. A lot of these verses we just glance right over, we don't even think about, you know?
Yeah. We read ourselves into it instead of reading into the context. Yeah. It's good, man.
But I think it's just so important to the topic of today instead of thinking like everything going on between Iran and Israel is like some type of biblical thing, or even seeing, and this was really big, and I think this is a huge problem with the church. I don't believe today's Israel or their religion has anything to do with old covenant Israel. Like
Hmm.
that entire religion was based around the temple. So whatever religion they are now, like they don't do anything. They're not Old Testament Jews. Like that's what I think that I feel like I used to think that, it's like, no, they're not Old Testament Jews. They're Talmudic, rabbinic Jews, and they don't do anything what the Old Testament says to do,
Yeah.
besides maybe like some insane Sabbath like rules. But the entire thing was centered around the temple, which is 2,000 years destroyed now.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. So you were pre-roll, we were talking about you were wanting to lay a little bit more foundation into I think some of the New Testament ideas around fulfilled ideology, and then we've talked before, and maybe this is just because I'm curious, but you've talked about some accounts of people seeing things in the sky even around that time. So if you want to talk a little bit
Well,
about that, maybe.
yeah. So, I mean, let's talk about this. So, I believe, like I mentioned earlier, that all over the New Testament, that it's very clear that they were all expecting this thing to be done very shortly. It's
Yeah.
at hand. We're at the last hour. The axe is at the roots or whatever. It's like in every book almost. And so what does that mean? Like, and so I think we have to get into the context that this was finished at the cross, but there was still the wrath to come after that to whoever wasn't in Christ, that they were going to basically not allow. Like, let me back up. Christ was born under the law to redeem those under the law. And so this was all about Israel being saved, basically. This is how I see it. This is how I'm seeing it more and more. Jesus says, "I only came for the lost sheep of the house of Israel."
Hmm.
In Jeremiah 31, the new covenant was made with the house of Judah and the house of Israel. He was born under the law to redeem those under the law. None of those have anything to do with us. We're not in the house of Judah. We're not in the house of Israel.
Yeah.
And this is another thing too, that I think has been a huge mix up. A lot, if not all, of the Gentile talk. Like a lot of this is what we're not getting is that the 10 northern tribes who were dispersed into the nations, it was about gathering them back in, like in Ezekiel, the two sticks, the house of Israel and the house of Judah are going to become one again. So the Assyrians conquered the 10 northern tribes much earlier,
Yes.
and then the Babylonians conquered the two southern tribes later on. The two southern tribes always kind of maintained their identity. Those were who became the Judeans, the Jews, and then there was what either was called Ephraim or Israel. They were dispersed into the nations, and a lot of it, they were like all the stuff and a lot of this. If not, I'm telling you, I'm starting to think it's all of it, but it was about gathering them back in and that they were called Gentiles. Like Gentiles just means like the nations. It doesn't have to mean like a pagan thing.
Yeah.
And so you'll see there's some in James, there's some of the books that are directly. talking to the dispersed of Asia. And who is it? Peter says, like, hey, Peter says that too. And then he also says, Paul, who also is writing to you. So a lot of this is talking to those who became, they basically became the pagan nations that they, but it was about gathering them back in. And so once it was finished at the cross, the whole point was to save them from the wrath that was coming in 70 AD. Like, look, it's done. Now come under this and don't let the Judaizers bring you back under the law. And so
Hmm.
a lot of this is fighting against those who are trying to bring them back under the law. It was about spreading the good news to tell them, hey, look, everybody who's dispersed in the nations, everybody who's in Judea, like this is done. Now, listen to what we're saying because the time is at hand where the judgment is going to pour down on the temple and on anybody who's in Moses because the last Adam has come and this is done from henceforward. And if you don't listen, you're going to fall with the temple or whatever. You're going to be shipped out of here. And so the whole point was to kind of gather them back in, make them a house again, understand that the law in the temple was done, the last Adam had came into whatever henceforward from there. Like, and so I don't think this is a lot about like spreading the gospel to the nations. Like, I think that's done. And where I think where a lot of people are going to get tripped up in this is like, well, what are we supposed to do now? Instead of just being like, it's my story now. Like, it's me and God's story now. Like, this is like, it was a corporate thing before. Yes, we are the body of Christ. If we have faith in Christ and we're being brought into the body and we do get those promises and stuff like that. But it's like I just think that a lot of those texts are for this small period of time before the wrath came on them. And so it's for us to just like I keep saying, it's to glean from and to understand like that God's trustworthy and that there's really not like all this stuff for us to do or to look forward to. And now we just have our individual stories with God and like God just wants he wants to be our friend and wants to have a relationship with us. And so it's like coming into that understanding instead of acting like God wants us to do stuff for him still, which I think that ended with Christ and his disciples that eventually fell and finished at the temple.
So you're saying like Old Covenant was more of a corporate thing because, I mean, let's be honest, the Israelites refused to go up the mountain because they were like, no, I'll just send up Moses. We think we'll die and we're too scared, right? So that was a co corporate thing, whereas Christ's covenant with us is both embodies or encapsulates everybody, but it's a more personal thing, is what you're saying. It's like
100%.
individualized.
Yeah. Israel always saw themselves as a corporate like entity. Most of the texts are all about that, like the house of Israel, the house of Ephraim, or whatever Israel, Judah. Like it always was like a corporate sense where I don't think that's how it's supposed to be now, even though, like I said, we are the body of Christ. But I just don't like, I don't think God needs anything else from us to do. Like Christ already did it all. And that does that mean that we shouldn't like share like the coolness and the awesomeness of the Bible or go do good deeds and good works? Like, no, I don't think, I think we're still supposed to do that. But it's like, it's not on us. Like, it's not on us
Hmm.
to be like, I got to go to the island to spread the gospel so that Jesus will come back in the future, which is what everybody thinks. Like,
Hmm.
once once the gospel spread to the whole nations, then Christ will come back.
Yeah.
In the text, it says, Paul says, I preach the gospel to every creature under heaven. Like, so in the text itself, it says it's already been done. And
Yeah,
so I
and
just think that takes the pressure off of us. Like, the only thing we're supposed to do is have a relationship with God and work it out, you know?
yeah, yeah, and not to say that we shouldn't if we feel a calling to do that, but it's not on us to do that because I mean, like, uh, Arabs are meeting Jesus in dreams constantly. There's people like I
Hmm.
told a story recently about a guy I was listening to was in the Amazon and he met some tribe and told them basically every like they knew everything up to Babel and then he told them about Jesus and boom, but so they already knew of the form of God, The Navajo, they knew about Jesus before. They just didn't know he resurrected because there was an angel that told them about Jesus several times
Huh.
while Jesus was living, and so they were like, "Yeah, we know about Jesus. What happened to? We heard he died." And missionaries years and years later were like, they were like, "Well, no, he resurrected and he forgave sins and la da da." And they were like, "Holy crap!" Same thing with I was talking to my buddy JT yesterday. He was talking about how the I forget Cherokee or something. They had a very God focused thing, and so the Lord can meet people with or without us. But not to say that evangelism isn't still super important and that we shouldn't share, but it is a bit less on us and more like just doing things with God and being less, But I get where you're saying where it would make sense that like the actual, I guess, commandment might have been fulfilled because the idea of the whole world or whatever in Hebrew context was the known world. It wasn't
100%.
everything under the sun. It was everything that they knew about. And,
Yeah.
Marty Solomon talks about that, I think, a little bit. I even learned that a completely different paradigm for the firmament and the whole world and stuff when it comes to the flood. Like it's a completely different paradigm that the Hebrews had than what we think of, especially with in conspiratorial flat Earth ideology, like so it's actually completely different from even that. And it's like it's wild. We really have to go back to like what was the I just keep harping on this. We have to go back to what was the context. And I think you're like, it would make sense to me that yeah, they went to all the known world, and so the quote unquote commandment could be fulfilled. However, there's still a relationship with us, and we are still supposed to share, and we're still supposed to live it out and be a light on a hill and all that, right? So I get it.
I would say, yeah, it's like I think people are doing this, or they think like, oh, I gotta go to this region so that Jesus will come back. It's more like I get to do this because God's ways are just so much better. Why would I not want to go share? Let's just make this earth a better place.
Yeah.
And the fact that I kind of see it as like we're supposed to like we're if we're like the descendants, spiritually speaking, of Adam, and Adam was given dominion of that region, and then Christ was the last Adam given full dominion, and we're kind of like his children, the sons of God. It's like why we like we should kind of, and the world's expanded. And this is more just me. I don't know if I can make this case biblically, but I'm just kind of thinking logically about this. If we're the sons of God, then I just think that we are the ones that should have dominion over the earth and not like Pharaoh. I think that this is where this ends up is where, and I could be wrong on this, but it's like, I think Pharaoh is the one who's constantly in control. And it's like, I would rather us see like, dude, can we just get some like real Christians who are the ones like leading the charge in this? And like, instead of having all these evil, like, people like running the show, and maybe that's the part of the experience of the human being, and like there's always going to be a pharaoh, and that's how God wants it. I could, but I don't know, it would be
Uh,
nice to see the tables kind of turn
oh, I
for
I
at
do
least
think I do think the church abdicates entirely too much to like governmental powers. I think we should be doing a lot more of the generosity than just expecting the government to do it.
100%. I mean, if the church isn't the best ones going and rescuing and taking care of people, like what does that say about the church? Like I don't
Yeah.
know. I think it says a lot, and so we should be the example that sets. Everybody looks at them and be like, "Whoa, what's up with that?" Like if you
Mhm.
really want to let people know like how awesome Christ is, and what the real Christian religion is all about. Is like that's what it's about, taking care of the
Mhm.
widow and the orphan and the needy and
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. And so if we aren't the image, the picture perfect of that, there's a problem, and it
Mhm.
definitely shouldn't be on the government.
Yeah.
So
It's I like I that's the thing I do like about this view is that it changes our perspective from like, oh, we have to do all this stuff so that God will, and instead it's like,
fix it.
no, huh?
So God will fix it instead of
Yeah.
us partnering with God to fix it
Yeah.
ourselves.
So
Not
well,
ourselves,
or
but like in tandem.
well, it's like, so God will fill in the blank. So God will come back. So God will fulfill this. So God will fulfill that. So God will, but in reality, like if you take from this worldview, it's we get to do this because God already did, and it's a more, I think it's more of a fulfilling ideology. I think I said this in the last interview, with you, that the thing I like about it is that it does kind of take the fear away from like, oh, all this stuff is happening, and so I'm not gonna, like you said, I think, so the house is super dirty, but God's gonna tear it down so I don't have to clean it up, I like that idea
The
that it's like,
perfect
no,
analogy.
yeah, it's like, actually no, the house isn't clean, and it probably won't get torn down, and even if dispensationalists were right, it probably wouldn't for God knows how long anyway. So like if we look at it as if it is fulfilled, then we're like, no, we should clean house because it's the right thing to do and because we want to love people well and we don't want to suck.
Yeah, in my opinion, people have been conditioned to expect bad to come, that it's supposed to happen, and that there's nothing you can do about it. So, and I don't think everybody has this view, and they still like love people and all this stuff. But it's like I believe a huge bulk of the people believe there's nothing we can do about it. This is supposed to happen, and not only that, cheer it on and support it.
Hmm.
That's a lot of people do that. And
Yeah.
instead of being like, no, dude, it's done. We've been given the power by God to love people and the example by Christ to go out there, empowered by the Spirit of God, partnered with God to make a difference in the world while shutting down this evil, corporate, self fulfilling, war machine, greedy ideology and being like, that's not who should have dominion.
Hmm.
Like, how do we band together and become the body of Christ to make this happen? And in my
Yeah.
opinion, it starts with truth and proper understanding so that we can go forward instead of the church uses so much time bickering amongst itself with its 35,000 denominations and its insanity of arguments and it's like, dude, give me a freaking break, man. It bums me out
Yeah.
sometimes all about that and just how Christians act towards even each other.
Yeah. And the bummer is that a lot of it is based off of a naturalist worldview instead of a supernatural worldview, and a lot of it is based off of an English understanding instead of the ancient Hebrew understanding. It's such a
Yeah.
bummer. Um, yeah, no, I know that I have been guilty of it. I still am sometimes guilty of being like, oh well, it's just this way because it's supposed to be, or because like the powers of darkness are always gonna whatever. Yeah, but at the end of the day, it's like I keep reminding myself like, no, this doesn't have to actually be the way that it is, and like, and again, I keep coming across more and more preterist ideology, and I'm like, I think this actually probably does make some more sense, and it does give a little bit of peace. It's like I don't actually have to like worry about what's happening with those red heifers in Israel right now. Like, it doesn't matter.
I mean, I would say it's more like be aware of it because it's part of the enemy's plan and it has nothing to do with God, like in my
Right.
opinion.
But I
And
don't have
so
to
it is
worry.
happening. But is it biblical prophecy? No, like not in my opinion at all.
Hmm.
Are they doing it and are they going to try to build a third temple? Sure, but it has nothing to do with God.
Yeah.
And so I think the knowledge of how the playbook that they're using, they're like using Revelation and this stuff to like unfold this stuff on purpose.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Yeah.
Um,
Sweet. So. What else do you have that I could? I know that there's some things going through your brain that you're wanting to hit on. What's next, in your opinion? What should we focus on now?
Uh, I mean, I do think the whole I'm like it's so big, and I know we spent a good amount of time on this, but like understanding the whole Israel, like who is modern Israel and does that have anything to do with the Bible is so important. And like I was saying, understanding the end times views of Talmudic Judaism, dispensational Christianity, and Islam, and how they're self-creating and self-fulfilling prophecy is so big because the more we understand that's what's going on, the more we can not play their game.
Yeah,
That's what I think is going on. How do we stop playing their game? How do we teach other people to stop playing their game and be like, yo, just put the guns down. Stop giving them our money. Like, there's a point in time where people just got to say enough's enough. Like, well, dude, like we don't want this war. We don't want you guys to spend our money on this. Like,
yeah,
shut it down.
yeah.
The only reason it keeps going is because they have our participation.
Hmm.
And so that I mean, it's a really big point of view that I think only, at least in the Christian realm, preterism answers why this isn't okay. And I think you can get there very soundly biblically to where honestly, I think people just don't know the Bible enough and they're so taught and we grew up in this. But once you just like kind of show them biblically, it's like, look, this can't be true because of X, Y, and Z. Then it's like, I don't know. Once I saw it, I'm like, holy crap, this is everywhere. Like, how did I not see this before?
I'm the same way
So,
with like the political stuff. I'm the same way where I look at it and I get frustrated. I'll be honest, like I, somebody called me out the other day about like I feel like you're just sort of rage baiting people and I'm like I'm not, that's not my intention. Like I recognize that this political thing is not what people see it. A lot of them are too busy worshiping political figures and they're too busy thinking like, "Oh, we're going to be saved by Trump or we're going to be saved by whatever or the liberalist ideas, on the other side." And I get so frustrated because I'm like, when you really dig into what these people are tied to, like the Kabbalah, the Freemasons, the Talmudic Judaism, like all of it, when you start to really break down what it all is and what these people are all tied to, you start to go like, oh, they don't care. And then the law stuff. I mean, for me, that in itself goes like, oh, well, none of the politicians are actually for the people. And so I get this way all the time where I'm like, it's everywhere. Like, I just want people to see it. And I just have to be careful. I personally have to be careful how I approach it because I tend to get frustrated and then I speak out of that instead of out of like, okay, God, how do you want me to say something? That's something that I've been guilty of.
it's funny when I was walking my dogs before we came on here, I meant to start off saying like, I'm not saying any of this to be controversial or to sow division. I'm literally trying to do this, even though it's so different than everything we've been taught, and I'm not doing it to poke or prod. It's literally out of my love for the church and for Christians and for people to be like, look, this isn't what the Bible teaches. This isn't the way. Like, please get out of this. Stop supporting this. Stop like walking down this path playing their game with them. And
Hmm.
so it's not to be controversial. It's not to do any of that. And so it's even though it sounds like I'm really not. If I tell someone, and I hate saying it like this, and my ex used to, she would just like throw it out there like it sounded, because when you say it like this guy already thinks Jesus returned. And when you say it like that, it's like, because everybody has this idea like, oh, he's coming back physically. He's going to reign from Jerusalem. He's going to be like reigning for 1,000 years. And it's like, no, 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 no. Look, the timing and the nature is completely different than we understood. He was coming back in judgment and wrath within that generation. He was coming on the clouds, like
Yeah.
how it was always used. And we went over that quite a bit in the first
Hmm.
interview. And it's like when you say it so haphazardly like that, it's like it makes you look insane. Like, and I'm like, no, 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 no. That's like, yes, Jesus did come back, but not the way you're thinking. And so it's like,
Yeah.
it's important to I don't know, man. It's just, in my opinion, this is like one of the most important topics, and it's not to be controversial, or because
Yeah.
like if you say that to most Christians, they're gonna like, what do you mean? You're insane. You're retarded. Like,
Yeah.
um,
They'll just start
yeah,
to like kind of mock it a bit. Yeah, and that happens with everything. I mean, I could go, hey, that's not a contrail, that's a chemtrail, and for a long time it was, oh well, that's stupid, and now all of a sudden it's governmentally exposed, and all of a sudden people are changing their tune. But it's the same thing with everything that is hidden truth, and not to conflate this to be like, oh, this is definitive. I'm not there, but to just say that like this is definitively the truth. But a lot of the stuff, it's like, oh, you start to unfold stuff, and people respond with like, no, that's stupid, that doesn't make sense, that can't be true. And then as they start to see, oh wait, it is true, they let go of that. And I think that's just, unfortunately, it's human nature, but that is something we have to break through on. And that's something that's why I like to dig through all this stuff on this podcast, is to take people from like, oh, all of this doesn't make sense and it's stupid, and I don't want to know anything about it, to like getting used to wrestling with concepts, wrestling with the text in the Bible, wrestling with like like what's actually going on, what are my worldviews, how can I wrestle with it. And even if you do come out the other side and you have a completely different opinion with me, great. But at the very least, what I want to see is people willing to wrestle with their preconceived notions, because even if you are mostly right, you're still probably at least somewhat wrong. So you should be trying to figure out where you're wrong, you know?
100%.
Yeah.
But yeah, yeah, dude, I mean, it's a tough thing to wrap your head around. Like, it wasn't like an overnight flip for me,
Yeah.
like it took some wrestling with. It took a lot of hours of kind of studying, trying, even trying to, how do I, the more I tried to like poke holes at it, the better I got the understanding that this is a way better view. And so it's right to question it and
Yeah.
wrestle with it. And you know what? This is growing and growing, and there's pastors who have who know this and don't want to say it, number one, because they don't want to get fired. And then there's pastors who understand that it's the truth and they're willing to get up and say it and willing to be fired. And there's many out there sharing their story. There's a one guy named Joel who was a pastor. Literally, his wife divorced him over it. The church fired him over it. Like his whole life got turned up because he was like, "Look, it is what it is. I believe it, and I'm willing to say it, and I don't care." And he's not the only one. And there's people getting kicked out of churches for it, and it's like, if you don't have a dog in the fight of like, I've written books and I've got a whole group of people who are following me, and it's like I don't have anything to lose by just saying what I think is true, and I feel like I've got some pretty good evidence to back it up.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I wouldn't be saying it, and it's out of love that I'm even doing it, even
Yeah.
if people want to think that. Well, I haven't really had that many problems about it. Honestly, I've told good amount of people about it. No one's like really pressed back that much besides my ex-girlfriend who
Yeah.
but yeah, that's not has nothing to do with why she's an ex, but it's like she was because she loved Jesus and like she, she definitely wasn't having it, but she wouldn't even like hear me out most of the time too.
Mm,
She's, well, I don't want to hear it. Like
yeah.
refused to watch videos about it, stuff like that.
Yeah, it's frustrating. I've been there in the past too, where I'd have like an idea and I'd be like, I at least want to flush it out, and they're like, this is ridiculous. Like, I don't want anything. I'm like, come on, like I may be wrong, but at least it's like there's something to it, right? So, but yeah, I mean, so what are some of the other things that you're that I guess that you've wanted to share since the last time that you were kind of pondering on?
Yeah, sure. Well, here, this is something cool, and I want to get into Genesis. Maybe just like set. How far in are we? Do you see the
We're
time?
just under an hour, I think.
Okay, so maybe I'll share this one thing about like the war and the zealots, and then maybe I'll just set up like a teaser and we can do a Genesis thing as the next time, but just kind of set it up. But
Okay.
so um this is something most people don't know anything about, but there was like massive like zealot factions within the Jewish community around the time of the war, where they were like really zealous to like overthrow Rome and were I mean, I don't know exactly their beliefs, but there was like pretty some crazy faction fighting already going on in Jerusalem at the time of the war.
Hmm.
And there was one guy named John, son of Levi, or like he's also known as John of Gashgala, which I guess is where he was from, who was a zealot leader who claimed to be the Messiah, and he had like a massive following, like 20,000 people or something like that. And he took up a fortress in the temple, and he claimed that he was the Messiah and that he was going to be able to overthrow Rome if everybody listened to what he said.
Hmm.
And he made them all, he goes, burn the storehouses of food and I'll deliver you from this. And so they all burned. Israel had a massive stockpile of food, and so they burned the storehouses, and that's why a massive famine went through all of Israel at that time, and where part of the curses was people eating their own babies. So Josephus records when they went in, there was women eating their own babies because for 5 months it was a siege surrounding them. Nothing was going in, and so by the time they actually like came in, there was no food. There was dead bodies everywhere. John Levi took up fortress in the temple, and when Titus came, telling him to get out of the temple because they didn't want to burn the temple down, and he refused, and that's why they destroyed the temple because he refused to come out and made it a fortress. And
Wow.
so you could just that whole when I learned that whole story, I thought that was insane. And so there's some I don't know if I still take it like this, but as the man of lawlessness, as John Levi being that person who claimed to be God in the temple. I've maybe heard some better evidence that it's the high priest, but I thought for a long time I was thinking that it was this dude John Levi, and I don't know if I've made up my mind on it, but still I thought all that information about this zealot faction in the army was pretty nuts.
That is nuts.
There's
You,
there's there's lots of cool tidbits from Josephus on stuff like that. And you mentioned the whole armies fighting in the skies. Yeah, there was some historians who recorded stuff like that they saw angels and chariots in the sky. I I don't know what to make about that. I think that was a kind of a common practice of those days to kind of like embellish and write that kind of stuff.
hmm,
I don't really put any too much stock into that, but still, it's kind of cool that they recorded that was going on.
okay.
Um, yeah, it's that one's. I just think that's kind of was like a common practice of those days. So
Well,
I'm
I
not
also
sure how
wonder,
much.
like, as I've explored people seeing in the spirit, I wonder, like, if some people actually were seeing things, and so they wrote it down, and other people were like, "Yeah, right," but maybe they were like seeing in the. It's kind of like Elisha and his servant being surrounded in that fortress or whatever, and he's like open his eyes, and all of a sudden
Mhm.
they see the angels. Like it could be very well that, I think it could be. That'd be fascinating if it
Yeah,
was.
yeah. I mean, it's definitely a possibility for sure.
Hmm.
Trying to think if there's it's so here this is cool so the siege of Jerusalem did last 5 months in Revelation 9 where it talks about the locusts who have a golden crown and hair like a woman and have like scorpion tails and breastplates on and so the siege from the Roman soldiers did last 5 months. They did wear crowns that had horse's hair on them, like that was like the traditional thing that Romans had, that were like long horse's hair, and they
Okay.
obviously had like breastplates on. And it you have to through Revelation, there's so much symbolism.
Well, and a
All of
spear
it
is very
has to go
similar to.
back.
I was
What?
saying, and a spear is also similar to a scorpion's tail.
Yeah, I was even thinking like a sword, if a sword like
Yeah.
on their thing, like, but
Yeah.
yeah, all of that too. I mean, the point of that, in my opinion, is there's also in the Old Testament, I know in Joel and I think a few other times where locusts are symbolic for an army coming, that it's used that way in the Old Testament. And that in part of the curses from Leviticus 26 and Deuteronomy 28 was that they're going to be torn apart by wild beasts, and so that John's kind of using the army, kind of amalgamating them as some type of wild beast who's going to come tear them apart, and so they're the ones who are kind of fulfilling that part of it. Is
Well,
kind of how I see that.
and
Um,
Gentiles would have been considered like wild dogs, I think, right?
yeah, for sure. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Animals are used all over the Old Testament for different groups and people, especially with wild animals for sure.
Mhm. Well, dude, we
Um,
can we can go into some of the Genesis stuff. I have no problem with it if we go a little long, or if we go like really long, I could always split it into two, but
yeah. I almost would rather be like almost a little bit have like a notepad full of some of the
okay.
Genesis stuff to go into it a little bit more. I think
Right.
just it would just be more entertaining with like
Okay.
very specific.
Yeah.
Um, but on the note of people being animals, so we briefly talked about this before the opening was I've been just a shout out to my friend Dallas. He's got a YouTube channel called Better Understanding the Bible, and he's really been hitting Genesis really hard as a very different understanding as set of like literal physical creation of like the heavens and the earth as like a planet and the stars and as more of like a poetic prologue to setting up the nation that became Adam out of ancient Mesopotamia. Would be an easy way for me to say that, I think.
Hmm.
And so the thought is,
So
and I was
pre-Adamite
thinking
idea.
this, what?
The pre-Adamite idea.
Well, I mean, I don't know if it's pre-Adamite. It's more, I guess, yeah, I guess, yeah.
Okay.
So let me back up. And even before I met him, I was already kind of seeing it like this, and he's like way developed it though. As instead of it being the first created person, um, as Adam as like the first human being ever, and it's more about what you'll see in the rest of the kind of story of the Bible of Abraham being pulled out from Ur and Israel being pulled out from Egypt and Christ being pulled out from Israel is that it's about Adam, the first king and priest, being pulled out from ancient Mesopotamia, maybe like Sumeria or something like that. And it was about bringing like order to the chaos of the ancient Near Eastern world and setting up someone to have dominion and authority by God to be the king of that region.
Hmm.
And so it's about setting up this first Adamic kingdom given authority by God to rule over all the nations of ancient Mesopotamia, and that all the symbolism going down creating isn't about like God creating trees and God creating the fishes and like and if you throughout the Bible you'll see that trees, sea, or waters, land, animals, um, sun, moon, and stars, like everything that's used is symbolically used for people all throughout the Bible, and then it's like basically kind of setting you up for the different tribes, people who are in covenant with Adam, people who were not in covenant with Adam, who weren't a part of the territory, and were like the pagan nations not under the dominion of Adam. And that would be the seas and the sea creatures. And in the King James, you'll see that the serpents, like sea snakes and stuff, is actually within the created seas orders, and that's something like as we get into Genesis 3 is where the seas start to mingle with the heavens, where that's
Mm,
kind of like the serpent bringing the tree of knowledge and the woman like all getting kind of combined, where it never should have the serpent had then the sea creatures had no business being where Adam, who was ruling from heaven, the authority place, like being. And so it's like kind of corrupting the authority place through bad doctrine, basically,
interesting.
or whatever, corrupting it somehow, corrupting the rule of the king, which is definitely the pattern we see all throughout the Bible. What in Kings and Chronicles, it's always good king, bad king, good king, bad king, them go following other gods or letting Solomon with his 700 wives, letting him lead him to other gods. Like that is the pattern in the Bible. So it's pretty cool to see it's just a different mindset of
Yeah.
learning. And this is something that's really helped me. Like, what are the patterns that are constantly like redone throughout the Bible
Right.
and how to see it, push it back even further, even if it's not like the exact language we're used to, because we keep talking about context. Like, this is an ancient Near Eastern Mesopotamian document, we're so far removed from some of the words and usage that they had, and our understanding of reading even like the Enuma Elish and like the ancient Babylonian and Sumerian and Assyrian religious texts that they found has helped us understand a lot better about what's going on even with the Jewish text. And
Yeah.
so I'm sure I know you're familiar with some of that stuff.
Some of it, and I know a lot of it is like a lot of scholars believe that Genesis and stuff was a response to beliefs held in the near like the neighboring religions and stuff like that. And it was like, no, actually you got it wrong. Here's what God actually did. And I will say I at least recognize that Marty Solomon in his podcast um Bema. Yeah, it took me a second to
Yeah,
remember. Bema podcast. He breaks down like sort of how it was clearly intentional that there were certain patterns that were established. Now, that particular idea I don't know about. I hadn't heard that before, but at the very least there is like a pattern that is set up with the Garden of Eden, and then it's sort of replicated again in Noah, and then replicated again in the Tower of
uh-huh.
Babel, and replicated
Yep.
again, and so there are certain themes that are intentionally replicated, and there's chiasms set up intentionally so that people would look to a certain piece of the story as like the thing to get. And there was a poetic nature to it. But it wasn't meant to be a doc like the way that we think in our Greek mindset. Like it wasn't meant to be a document explaining exactly how things went. It was more meant to be a document that you would learn from because you explored and you were like, you had questions and you recognize the quote unquote problems, and then you would wrestle with those problems, and then you'd come out with a revelation of something instead of just being handed on a silver platter the answer you're looking for, right? It was more of a intentional like teaching tool instead of a here, let me give you the answer tool, right? So I do recognize a lot of that, and it's super fascinating how those themes are actually, replicated over and over again in the Bible.
Yeah, it's for sure. The whole thing with like, Adam to Noah to Shem to Moses or Abraham to Moses to Christ. All those are the Adam figures. And this is and I might have said it a few times, but like Christ is the last Adam. That's why I do think that throughout the Bible there is constant cyclical patterns going on. Like it's when you see it, you see it. It's super obvious when somebody points them out to you. Um, it's super. That's one of my favorite topics, like in the Bible, is like understanding the patterns and seeing how they all kind of fit together. And But where I think it ends is he's not the second Adam or the third or the fourth. He's the last Adam. It's
Hmm.
done. It's over. Like, and yes, for sure, I do think even today, yeah, like I said, I mean, there's nothing new under the sun. Stuff happens and it happens, but I don't think there's like biblical patterns still unfolding. But there's obviously stuff that keeps happening that we can glean from, and there's nothing new under the sun. And so we can get wise through studying what not. I think the Bible's more about what not to do than what to do. Like,
Yeah.
so this is, I'm still trying to wrap my head around this, but my friend Dallas was talking about this that think is super important when he was talking about the image of God and how he was saying that the image of God is how he rules from heavens and he rules over the earth and the sea, and that he created Adam, the man, to sit in the authority of heaven, to have dominion over the earth, almost as like the representative of God who reigns from heaven, the authority place. And that if the image gets messed up, whereas the sea is the one ruling over the earth and the heavens, is when like the pagan nations are Nebuchadnezzar in Daniel 2, there's like a clear layout how it kind of you could see how it shifts. We'd have to go through the text, but it's super cool. And I think that's kind of what's going on now. Like I kept saying, like the wrong people have dominion. It's like that's what it seems like to me. Like I don't feel like the line of God are the ones who are sitting in the place of authority in heaven under Christ right now. I could be wrong. I mean, Christ is definitely ruling and reigning from heaven, but it's like, does he have his partners here on earth hanging out at the top with him? I think most of us are like way down here. We're
Hmm.
not maybe not doing our part. I could be wrong on that. I don't know. It seems like those in authority
Well, even
have a lot of dominion over earth that aren't Christ's.
yeah,
So
and even
it's
so,
interesting to think about.
yeah, even in that parallel alone, like from Genesis to the Nebuchadnezzar story to even just now, like if you look at the legal precedent, there's what's considered uh, uh, I think it's land law is common law, sea
Mhm.
law is admiralty or commerce law. And then you've got, I think air might be the equivalent of trust law, maybe, if I remember it. I that's the one I don't always remember. But the ruling and reigning legal system is commerce law. Like Brock and I broke down a little bit, is we aren't under
Yeah.
the Constitution, which was meant to be more of a common law layout. We're not under it anymore. We're under admiralty law. We're under the law of the sea. And so sometimes I think of that, and this is how I used to think of it. Maybe less so now with like this more preterist ideal, but I sort of was like, oh, the system of the beast, the beast of the sea and like all that taking over. It's admiralty law, it's this commerce law, it's this thing that has removed us from under. So I could see I even see like weird parallels in that too sometimes, I don't
No,
know, it's crazy.
that's brilliant, dude. I didn't even think about that. Like, wow, that's the almost more of the law of the land. It's really the law of the sea. Like, dude, there's something that makes me smile. There's something to that. I wasn't even thinking about that.
Yeah,
But I'll have to bring that up to my friend, see what he thinks. Because I think there's something to that, dude. That's crazy.
I think so too. And even if it is just that there's nothing new under the sun, it really is like the beast always trying to get back on top, trying to make its way the best way. And I think we see that in we not only law, but I agree. I think we've talked about this a little bit. I feel like that's just sort of the way that the world has worked, and it's seeped into even the church to where we have this almost mystery Babylon thing going on in a lot of churches, and I wouldn't be surprised if like uh dispensationalism is a bit of that. I wouldn't be surprised at all. I'm not there yet, but I definitely see how it very well could be um, like one of the big deceptions that's meant to keep the people of God under the thumb of the paganistic system, the the occult system that's sort of running everything and keeping us from taking our authority, taking we've abdicated it. I mean, regardless of what's right, which paradigm is right or wrong, it's clear that the church has abdicated its authority. Like that's just clear. And so I think we definitely have to be changing our paradigm and getting back to the design that Christ set for us, that we would rule and reign in his place and we would take, and what that looks like, I don't know. I go back and forth how much people should be involved in law and how much we shouldn't, and the politics and stuff. I go back and forth. I'm not gonna lie, I don't have all the answers, but we absolutely have to be
Yeah.
wrestling with it.
Yeah, I mean, if you would have asked me a couple of years ago, I probably would have said like, no, no, we're not supposed to like. The more and more I think about it now, it's like, dude, we should be more involved than anybody else. Like, you know,
Yep.
but
Yep.
yeah, it is something interesting to wrestle with for sure. But I mean, hmm, that whole C thing is really kind of blowing my mind right now. I'm liking that.
Yeah, you'll have to spend a little bit of time on that. Well,
When are you gonna have Hit Brock back on? That was a super good podcast.
yeah, I need to reach out to him. It might be a little bit just because we're legitimately anytime about to have a kid. So,
Oh wow.
I'm backlogging a bunch of episodes, recording a bunch right now, and then that way I can keep releasing them. But yeah, we're about to have a kid, so it might be a little bit. I've got like hopefully by Monday I'll have between 6 and 8 episodes backlogged so that I'm ready. So it might be a bit, but I do want to get him back on definitely and explore some of that a bit more. So
Yeah, he was awesome. I really enjoyed that one.
thanks, man. Yeah, he's a good
When,
guy and
when
he
so
knows a lot.
is it gonna be a boy or a girl?
We don't know. We're still waiting to find
Oh,
out. Yeah.
okay, sweet.
So by the time this comes out, we'll definitely know. But yeah, I do think though that we're probably not gonna like we'll probably tell people what the kid ends up being, but we're definitely not gonna be posting pictures on social media just because of how sketchy that can get and you
For
know
sure.
and but yeah, it'll be fun. I'm excited, man. It's right around the corner. She's like what is it 38 weeks I think right now, so legitimately could be any day. So yeah,
Yeah.
man. It's
Congratulations, man. That's awesome.
Thanks, brother.
Happy for you.
Appreciate it. Yeah. So I'm stoked. But yeah, man, was there anything else that you wanted to sort of hit on before we wrap up or
No, I think that's good, dude. I do think maybe yeah, gives me some good time to maybe we could hit the Genesis thing a little harder, a little bit more detail because it's super fun to see this in such a different light, like literally like not we don't have to go line by line, but like really
right?
kind of hitting the topics like what's the sun, what's the trees, what's the fish, like
Yeah,
I
let's
think
do
that
it.
would be really cool. And I just think it's so different than what people are used to that it would be like a good fantasy to just think differently, you know?
Yeah,
So I think that would be cool.
absolutely. I don't, even when I don't always land where other people land, I always enjoy the other perspectives because, like I said, I hold just about everything loosely. The only thing that I do not hold loosely is like Jesus absolutely is who he said he was. There is
Yeah,
absolutely historical precedent beyond a shadow of a doubt that he died and resurrected and like that he interacts with me day like on constantly. He blesses me constantly. He proves himself constantly. Like my life is a it's proof that Jesus takes care of us, and
100%.
so all those things I'm like super firm on. As far as everything else goes, I'm like, okay, I'll hold it loose and I want to know the different perspectives because maybe somebody's right, but maybe somebody has a piece of it. Maybe this guy has a piece of it. And that's why I refuse to like get into the fights of like, you know, who is the true church and whatnot that's happening right now in the world. I'm like, this is ridiculous. Catholics, Orthodox, Protestants of every variety. It's like we all have a piece, man, and we gotta stop fighting over it. We gotta start like at least, and this is just in culture in general, we've lost the marketplace of ideas. We've lost the ability to come together and like explore ideas. Instead, everybody's just bickering and fighting, and I'm sick of it. So,
100%. I would say this too, like this is how you don't indoctrinate people. If you only teach them one view in the way they're born, since they were born, it's like you that's indoctrination. But this is why I love studying all the views and make up your own mind what's correct, or it might be a little bit from here and a little bit from here, and like that fits better. But if all you ever know is one view, that's a problem, you know?
Yep.
Like it's like
Amen.
I just think it's a great place to land. It's like, look, just study it out for yourself, check out all the views, keep your mind open. There's no reason to hold anything so tightly besides what you said. Like, so, I mean, I'm right there with you on that, but I've been having a blast really trying to figure some of this stuff out. I do think like I said, the details on how we get there can change, but it being fulfilled, in my opinion, is super important, especially to the topic of what's going on in the Middle East today and
Mhm.
how to like bring that down. And I think that is a good answer on teaching people. But it's just like I said, the details from A to Z, I don't really care. But the fact that the story is A to Z and Z was at the first century, like, and I will put my feet I would say even I would put my foot down on it, but it's like it doesn't also like it is what it is, you know. I'm
Yeah.
not gonna get
Again,
into a fight about people.
yeah, again, the perspective that it brings is absolutely the most important part. That's what I think.
Yeah,
It's seeming more and more like that's the case to me. But regardless, I just love the perspective that it brings. That I don't have to be afraid of what the devil's doing. I don't have to be like concerned with what's going to happen in the world. I don't have to be concerned that the world's going to end. Even I can just keep going and go like, okay, well, I can just remember that my relationship with Christ and living that out is the most important thing. And even though the world's screwy, I don't have to assume that like I need to be super invested in it as much. So
yeah, that's good.
it's awesome, man. Well, like real quick, I'll pray and then we can you can if you've started doing your channel stuff yet or whatever, I don't know, you can plug stuff. But Jesus, we just thank you for this podcast. We thank you that the people that are willing to listen to this are open minded enough to explore all the options. And so, Lord, we just pray that you would bless them, Lord. If we're pissing off the enemy, God, we pray that you would protect us, that we wouldn't have any pushback, and if we do have pushback, Lord, that your spirit would fight on our behalf. And so, Jesus, bless those that are listening, bless Nick, and thank you, Jesus, for your goodness. Amen. Sweet man.
Amen.
So, where do you want to point people? Do you have you gotten that YouTube channel started yet?
No, dude, I haven't yet. It's funny, like the my friend Dallas really threw a wrench in some of my understandings where I was like, all right, I'm about to kind of make some content. And he was like, kind of maybe giving me even some better ideas on some stuff. And I'm like, dude, now I have to like change the whole framework of what I
Fair
was
enough.
gonna do because yeah, he's just so biblically interconnected where it's like he doesn't even have to pull from anywhere else, like Josephus or nothing. And I was just like, dang, bro, like I think you've got even a better grasp at this than I do. And so now I'm trying to like restructure.
Yeah.
But it's fine. I think having good talks like this is good enough for now. And
Oh,
I've
for
been,
sure.
there's other people who've been asking me too, so we'll see.
Well, my encouragement would be like I all the time am changing my mind on how I look at certain things, and so like for me, I'm like, yeah, there are people that have like a way better grasp on all these things that I want to talk about, but I might as well just start doing it. So maybe
Sure, yeah,
you could do it. I mean, maybe it's not time yet, but if that's part of it, maybe you can always start and you can always pivot. I
for
think
sure.
starting sometimes is important
Yeah,
regardless of if you're
the hardest
dialed
part.
or not. Yeah. Awesome, man. Well,
Cool.
thanks for joining me again, man, and we'll do it again soon. Sooner rather than later, hopefully. So,
Yeah,
right on.
dude, maybe next time, you, me, and Anthony can all do one together. I
Sure.
think that would be cool.
Yeah, you can hit him up. I tried to text him the other day, but he hasn't responded yet, so he must be busy. But right
Yeah,
on.
sweet man.
Well, thanks for listening, guys. Go ahead and subscribe if you haven't. Send it to a friend if you liked it. I'm spending less time on Instagram, so that's not gonna push the podcast super hard. So if you really like it, it really does help if you push it or 5-star it or whatever. So thanks, guys, and we'll catch you in the next one. Peace.